Greetings, humans. How is everyone today? I am Bob Harris. This is the Football Diehards Saturday live stream. Ask me anything we call it. We'll kind of just take it wherever it goes. Hope everyone's doing well. Sean Sarah is already here looking for my top 3 rookies. We're going to talk about that a little bit, Sean. And I mean, I think, like everyone, I'm not. So first of all, I'm not a draft net, right? So I mean, I think I tend to focus on the running backs. I think we're all going to start looking at maybe wide receivers, going forward. I think Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs are seem like pretty solid plays. Bijan Robinson seems to be the first overall. I talked to Matt Waldman this week about that. I think at wide receiver, you're looking at a handful of guys. JSN, Ohio State wide receiver, Njigba. Smith and Njigba seems to be one that I kind of favor, but I don't know. We'll find out. One thing we're going to do here, Sean, going forward is, hey, thanks for coming, James. Appreciate you. Hi, Andrea. We'll get into all this, but something we're going to do. And by the way, today, if you listen to the SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, John Laub, our rookie expert here at the Football Diehards site, will be on to start planting those flags. We'll have him on this live stream here in the coming days. We'll have Matt Waldman from the rookie scouting portfolio chime in on these things. And so most of my information at this point comes from those. And so, that'll be something we get into here going forward. The Senior Bowl always brings out a bunch of enthusiasm and excitement about the draft. So we'll get that covered, Sean. And if you go to the site right now, John Laub's rookie quarterback assessments are already up. So you can check those out at footballdiehards.com. In case you're just getting here and you've not been here before, like James Furry, you might know who I am, but he's not been here. So we do this a couple times a week. I do it on Wednesday and Saturday. Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Today, Saturday, we'll be doing 11 a.m. I'll probably go back to noon going forward. This is just kind of the radio show. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the radio show, SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. You can catch us 4 days a week right now, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 10 p.m. Saturday, today we're on at 3 to 5. I believe next week we'll be on from 7 to 9. And we'll also do a special Super Bowl pregame show, Mike Dempsey and myself, next Sunday from 3 to 6. So if you get tired of all the televised pregame, we got you covered. Plenty going on this week just to touch base on. I'm going to talk about this mock draft behind me. It was our first mock draft Monday. We do these regularly on the radio program. In this case, we have 4 drafters, kind of the usual thing. We go through about 8 rounds. We each have 3 teams, and we pick for them. So if you can start checking that out in the background there, we're going to talk about that in a few minutes after I get through some of the news and notes of the week and some of the interesting things going on around the league. And I want you to start thinking about looking at some of the picks. Wendy Early, hello, yo. Start thinking about some of the picks you think were intriguing to you. I'll put it politely. Or ones that you just hated, ones that you love, whatever, teams that you like there. As you can see, kind of, as you're looking at that, thank you, Andrea, I appreciate that. As you kind of look at that, you'll see that it goes, the first 6 teams, then the second 6 teams. So 12-team draft. Myself, Mike Dempsey, my co-host on SiriusXM, and 2 of our colleagues here at Football Diehards, Eric Romoff, like I don't know his name, and Jamie Calandro, both chimed in. And again, we do these regularly on the radio. We have a great time with them, so expect more of those over the course of the offseason as we kind of adjust values and make adjustments to the developments that are ongoing. So a couple things before we get started on assessing the draft that I wanted to touch on that I thought were interesting. First of all, the Super Bowl injury report. Why? Why do we give injury designations in the off week? I have no idea. Kadarius Toney and Juju Smith-Schuster both listed as questionable. Mecole Hardman doubtful. We'll see if Clyde Edwards-Helaire can get back on the field for this game. He won't be on the injury report because he's not on the active roster yet, but he may get on the active roster before it's all said and done. But watching you next week, I think some of these injury designations will go away. Patrick Mahomes says he feels good enough. Jalen Hurts says he feels good enough. Probably neither of them are 100%, but both of them clearly capable of getting the job done, as we saw this past week. I had a question. Did anyone watch any of the Pro Bowl stuff or whatever they call it now? I caught a little of the replay last night. I'll be honest with you. I've been kind of down on the Pro Bowl for a number of years. I thought it was ridiculous. I'm glad they don't play it as a game or pretend it's a game or call it whatever they were calling it. They're just playing flag football or whatever. But I guess the skills competition stuff is kind of interesting. Does anyone watch that? Anyone find it like remotely interesting? I think it was more of like a destination event. If you're there, maybe it's cool to check out, meet players, hang out, have a good time. I'm with you, Andrea. Just to see what it was all about. I watched some of the replay, but not until last night. Wasn't that exciting? Wasn't that great? All right, let's touch on some news here and kind of set the table, get caught up on some of the things, and let some people show up here before we jump into the mock draft situation. Sean Payton officially in as head coach. I know we hit on this last week, but now it is official. He's going to make like between 17 to 20 million. That's the thing about coaches, right? They are part of the salary cap. You don't have to worry about how much you pay them. I'm surprised. This is a lot of money for a coach. Good morning, Albert. Thanks for coming. Appreciate your time. Appreciate everyone coming again. Love having the interaction here and kind of helps me get a feel for what people are interested in, as well as, kind of disseminating information. So it's a good time. But Sean Payton thinks he can get the most out of Russell Wilson. Maybe he can. Is Russell Wilson going to be a value play you're trying to target in drafts? Like maybe as a quarterback too, if you can get him that way. I hope that the upside, hope that he returns, or is he falling off the cliff? Kind of think that he has not fallen off the cliff. There were a lot of reasons for his downturn last year. New place, new people, not great coaching, maybe. Also, a lot of injuries. And that's, the receiving, James Furry wants to know how Sean Payton will affect Jerry Jeudy. I think the question is, Jerry Jeudy really came on strong. I'm pretty impressed, with his late season run. Thought Russell Wilson showed some improvement. If they can both continue to show that level of play, and it's not unreasonable to think Sean Payton can get a little more out of this offense, and if they can avoid injuries, like injuries were a big deal for this team last year, and I mean, I know teams don't make excuses or don't use injuries as excuses, but injuries are excuses, right? Or they're at least reasons to help explain some of the dismal outcomes. And in this case, it was a pretty dismal outcome. And Russell Wilson himself was hurt, talking to people who cover the team on a daily basis. That was something that comes up pretty regularly is, that was latissimus tear or whatever Russell Wilson had, on his throwing shoulder or back, if you will, was an issue for him. And, it caused him problems. And maybe he was getting healthy down the stretch. But my expectation, to put a finer point on it, James, is this is a positive for Jerry Jeudy. Maybe a positive for Cortland Sutton as well. Just an offensive improvement. We've seen Sean Payton make good use of the tight end in the past as well. Right, so maybe good news for Greg Dulcich. We'll see where Javonte Williams is at in his return from the ACL. That's going to be of great interest. Hello, Troy, and thank you. Appreciate that. Emil puts a lot of hard work into the whole setup here, so kudos to him for this. But I do think I'm kind of, so I think every year, James, I go into drafts looking for people who came up short and trying to tell myself happy stories. This is fantasy football is a game where we tell ourselves happy or sad stories that, because we're trying to predict the future, right? And I can tell myself plenty of happy stories about the Denver Broncos and, paint some pretty optimistic scenarios. And I think you paint those optimistic scenarios in the context of, I'm going to get some value on these guys, right? We're not going to pay the same freight for Russell Wilson that we did last year. There's no doubt about that. I would say we're going to get cheaper, prices on Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy as well. And I think, a lot of times I end up getting the cheaper when I feel like there's two that, are fairly even. Maybe I go with the cheaper piece. In this case, I might be off Sutton a little bit more on Jeudy, and I've kind of been Judy's, I don't want to say a skeptic, but maybe more pro Sutton in the past. Jeudy showed a lot down the stretch this year, and at the times when he was healthy. So injuries have been an issue for him and I'll get into this a little bit with San Francisco to paraphrase John Lynch. He's got to prove he can stay healthy. No, he doesn't. If you're new to this and you haven't been around, I'm injury agnostic. I think anyone can get hurt. Everyone does get hurt. Injuries aren't something, like a chronic injury. Yes, I will factor that into my calculations. But guys who are chronically injured, man, I think you miss out. Or I'm looking to gain a little value there. Like I'm looking to get a discount on players that are probably pretty good, but just weren't able to stay on the field. And it's usually, not because they're injury prone, it's just because they got injured. So there you have that. So back to Sean Payton. He is in. The Broncos had to give up some draft capital. I know there was a lot of discussion about they had other coaches that were on their radar. D'Amico Ryans, who ended up, being hired by the Houston Texans. And man, this seems like a perfect fit. So I've talked to Aaron Wilson from Click 2 Houston, local reporter. He's been covering the Texans for years. And I mean, he's one of the things he pointed out was he had Texans from the entire course of the history of the franchise show up, on the podium with D'Amico Ryans, who just seems like he has this energy. And it's just, I guess, the San Francisco defensive coordinator, maybe the next stepping stone to get Troy Hilson. Everyone gets hurt, but Dalvin Cook gets hurt every year. Look, he's got a chronic injury, right? He has a shoulder that every year you can count on being hurt. Also, you can almost always count on him playing through it. Right? They strap that thing up and keep it in place, and I get it. He's going to be interesting. You'll see in the mock draft where when we start talking about that. Where Dalvin Cook went, and I thought it was pretty interesting. I think you're getting a little bit of value there in round 3, right? In the middle of round 3. That's a little unusual. So anyway, we'll get on to that. Again, if you're just tuning in or you haven't been around, I'm Bob Harris. I know some people are just getting here, so we're kind of accelerate the pace a little bit. You can find me at footballdiehards.com. It's a website. Plenty of stuff there for you to check out, including John Lov's initial rookie assessments. His quarterbacks are up. We have some Super Bowl content up. It's the off week. The injury report's out. All those things. Silly injury report. What are they thinking? Like we don't have enough to talk about? I guess not. But I think we'll see what happens with the offense in Houston with the hire of D'Amico Ryans, obviously a defensive-minded coach. The offensive coordinator he hires there will be of great interest. There's a lot of offensive coordinator openings that are being filled or filling. The Chargers getting Kellen Moore, who kind of was talking about Josh Kelly playing a greater role. They've been trying to do this in Los Angeles behind Austin Eckler. I want to say like 3 straight drafts they've swung and missed, it seems like. Or Joshua Kelly, although, and Kellen Moore said it, Joshua Kelly's starting to come on. They would like somebody. They would like somebody to turn into the Melvin Gordon to work in tandem with Austin Eckler. I don't know that diminishes Austin Eckler's value. If you missed the live stream from Wednesday when I revealed my way too early top 12 rankings, go back into the channel and review it. I'll throw them out real quick if you want to, just to remind you, everybody. Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler was number 2 for me because touchdown regression didn't happen. And maybe it happens this year, but I mean, he seems to, 107 catches, hard to argue. Damian Pierce, a player we'll talk about here, James. Cooper Kupp, Travis Kelce, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, and Stephon Diggs. Those are my way too early top 12. I'll run through them again, or you can go back and watch that video. I'd highly recommend that. By the way, hit the like button while you're here. You can hit the dislike button if you don't like what you're seeing. That's okay. I'm all right with that. But there's the top. Emel's got that up there. The way too early top 12, and we'll talk about where some of those guys went relative to the situation. But Austin Eckler, every year we go in and are they going to find that complement, that guy that cuts into his workload? Last 2 years they have not found that guy despite trying. And I mean, we can go back the last 3 years. I want to say Joshua Kelly, Larry Roundtree III, who never really seemed to be a realistic candidate, although he's gotten some time. Last year, Isaiah Spiller. I'm old enough to remember when Isaiah Spiller was the 3rd highest ranked rookie running back of the draft class, right? What happened? Can he gain some steam? Either way, I think whatever concerns we have, and I think it's more our concerns than theirs. I mean, Austin Eckler talks every year about wanting not as big a workload. And he doesn't get like a huge workload. 107 catches is great. That, as long as he can keep that receiving equity, what are we going to care? I think it's encouraging that Kellen Moore, assuming they figure out how to use 2 backs, has used 2 backs and had 2 highly successful fantasy backs in the same offense in Dallas and Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott. So he at least knows how to do this. So good news there. James Murray had Dalvin last year, but was much happier with Damian Pierce with his volume, but also, yeah, and Pierce, was almost a flyer. He won't be this year. Again, talked to Aaron Wilson last night about him. Aaron Wilson thinks he's a top 10 running back in the league. I don't know about that, but I mean, from fantasy perspective, there's nobody else there. And this team has so many needs in the draft. They've got a lot of draft picks. I want to say 11 draft picks. They have so many needs. I don't think they're going to be running back as a need. So I think his role is going to remain relevant. So I would say the same with Dalvin Cook, by the way. So in the Dynasty startup, I got Dalvin Cook at 806. Yeah, the fear in Dynasty is real. It's funny, I was talking to Mike Fiella from Dynasty League Football, and you'll see Tyreek Hill at number 9 in my top 12. And, they're we've got to figure out what's going on with Tua Tagovailoa. It sounds like the Dolphins are, as things stand, they're all in on him. He finally cleared the concussion protocol. Good news there. But Tyreek Hill, is like, closing on 30. I mean, people will run away from him Dynasty. If you go to the current Fantasy Pros consensus rankings, the Dynasty rankings, Jalen Waddle's way ahead of Tyreek Hill. I don't know if that's really, called for. I don't know if he should be way ahead. I think Tyreek Hill has shown, and I don't think receivers fall off that same cliff at 30-ish that, maybe we think running backs do, except for Derrick Henry. I don't think he ever falls off a cliff. You can see he's my number 8. Right. Love Derrick Henry still. Until he shows me he's not Derrick Henry, just like Travis Kelce. And you'll be interesting in the mock draft. This was one where Mike Dempsey planted his flag on Travis Kelce at 101. Again, it's a defensible move. So getting back to some of the news of the week, Peyton, D'Amico Ryans, head coaching hires. Joe Mixon had a little trouble. He is not in my top 12. Apparently, there was a charge and the charges were dismissed. The charge is a class 1 misdemeanor. That he just interesting how this played out, right? So the charge came out. It was basically announced. It was called. It's a menace. The misdemeanor is for menacing, and apparently the allegation is he pointed a gun at a woman. His agent came out shortly thereafter and said the charges would be dropped. Shortly thereafter, the charges were dropped. Also, the charges can be reinstated. So this is a statement from the police department. Understanding that this particular case possibly involved a, quote, high-profile individual, supervision from Cincinnati Police Department instructed the case investigators submit the case for cursory review before any possible charge was filed to ensure completeness of investigation. So if you're famous, I guess you get a special review. Despite the dismissal, though, Cincinnati Police Department says new evidence has been recovered and ongoing investigation is still permitted. Once all the evidence is fully examined and criminal charges can be refiled at a later date. So this isn't done. Drew Davenport, if you don't follow him on Twitter, you should. I should have had his Twitter handle up. Drew was on the program, the radio program Thursday night. He is a fantasy maven and a great fantasy player, but also a lawyer who kind of keeps track of these cases, and he has a great thread on this one and all the stuff. At Drew Davenport FF, if you want to go check out his threads on that, it's always great stuff. But he actually happens to be an attorney in Ohio, deals with these kind of cases daily, right? So he was the first one to say, hey, this probably isn't over, even if they dismiss charges. So we'll see. He has a great thread on it explaining in more detail. In a related note in the Bengals, T. Higgins, a lot of chatter out there that if he wants a huge contract, the Bengals might be open to trading him. Well, a lot of might be, could be's. If he, is he going to want $25 million a year? Is he going to want that super high end contract? Then yes, probably someone's going to move on from him. Look, we've seen teams take a kind of a bifurcated approach to this. Like, part of the league thinks, wow, we're going to be all in on receivers and we're going to pay them whatever the hell they want. And part of the league says, we're going to move this commodity on. We don't want to pay this guy. See the Chiefs with Tyreek Hill, is a prime example. A.J. Brown, another great example of this. So, that's kind of, this is kind of where we're going to see a point. And maybe we'll get to that point where we find out with T. Higgins that, the money is more than they want to pay. They've got a lot of people paying Cincinnati. They're in good cap shape. But they need to get a long-term deal with Joe Burrow. At some point, they're going to have to do something with Chase. That's not imminent. Jesse Bates, but they have pieces they need to deal with. Not named T. Higgins, so how much T. Higgins wants is going to be a factor in this. You can see the draft a little more focus here. This was Monday night. If you see that round one, we have 12 teams, so kind of break it down. You see round one travels down to the second round, second level. So the first round, Travis Kelce, Christian McCaffrey, Jefferson, Kupp, Eckler, Chase. Then it goes down to Jonathan Taylor, which was my first the first pick that surprised me in this draft. But we'll get into that. So, but I wanted you to start looking and throw into the chat some of the picks that you think were great and some of the picks you think were not as great. A couple other notes here before we get into it. Derek Carr now has permission to seek trades from other teams. Now that they figured out what kind of compensation the teams, the Raiders will do the same thing the Houston Texans did with Deshaun Watson last year. You got to qualify. You got to have a qualifying offer to sit at the table, right? You got to have enough chips to get in the game. Brian Larkin would like a 10-team draft, so I'll put that on the list. And we're going to do drafts here, by the way, mock drafts in Sleeper, where you guys will be the drafters and I will sit here and pick on your drafts. Good time for me. But Carr now has permission to seek trades, so expect that to maybe accelerate. They want to get something done here in the next week or two. I think February 15th is the deadline to get off the hook for his contract, which is substantial, right? $32 million this year, $40+ million next year. So seems like there's good reason for them to want to do something. With Tom Brady now seemingly really retired, that kind of opens up the quarterback sweepstakes. The carousel is wide open. So, the destination for Carr. We'll see what else opens up. And that's going to be a thing to watch for the quarterback carousel. Maybe some surprise entries in this. We've got to see what's going to happen with Lamar Jackson. I guess I've said on this, throughout this year, I don't think he's going anywhere. How that happens, whether it's on the franchise tag, or they get a long-term deal done, remains to be seen. But I suppose it's possible. He's, part of the quarterback sweepstakes. Just don't think so. A lot of teams with needs. Is one of those teams San Francisco? I don't think so. I think Brock Purdy, I know you've all seen, suffer the elbow injury. Still waiting to decide. Waiting on a second opinion. The team would like him to get surgery. I'm sure they would like to get it done quickly. Because it's about a 6-month recovery. It doesn't need a total rebuild. The full Tommy John surgery is not required. So I think if he's healthy, he's the quarterback, but they also have Trey Lance. They have a great investment in him. If you talk to people who cover the team on a daily basis, and I have, they seem to think Brock Purdy is locked in. I tend to agree with that. Why? Because he is Kyle Shanahan on the field. Or at least he gives Kyle Shanahan a piece that Kyle Shanahan feels like is going to execute what he wants to do. So I don't know if they know that in Trey Lance yet. But Trey Lance will get an opportunity this offseason while Purdy recovers, to get in some extra work. So maybe it evolves into a real competition. I think as things stand right now, my default position is it's Brock Purdy as long as he's healthy, and we'll go from there. Kyle Pitts also recovering from his knee injuries. Supposedly that's going well. Is that going to be a discount play you are in on, Kyle Pitts, or have you just had enough? Atlanta might be a team looking for a quarterback. I saw ESPN, I think it was Bill Barnwell this morning, put up a list of the quarterback destinations. Thought it was interesting. He ranked number 1 San Francisco. I don't think it's on the list, but I think he's trying to be speculative and controversial. And maybe Brock Purdy's injury does open that up. They've said Jimmy Garoppolo won't be back. Aaron Rodgers has said he's not interested. Aaron Rodgers is the domino that needs to fall, before we figure all this out. All due respect to Derek Carr, we're way more interested. They list the Raiders as the number 2 destination. Atlanta Falcons, though, I thought, interestingly, number 3 destination. They've said they're okay with Desmond Ridder. I don't know that they are. I think that would be a good landing spot. All the NFC South teams could use a quarterback. I mean, Tampa Bay needs one. Carolina needs one. New Orleans needs one. I think that's a great destination. A lot of good pieces in place there. And the Falcons may well need one. Seattle Seahawks, I think they'll be good with Geno Smith. Mentioned the Buccaneers, Saints, Jets are way up on that list. And look, there's a lot of appeal to the Jets. I mean, a really good set of skill players, and the offensive line can stay healthy. A good offensive line, a great defense. So a lot to like there. And yes, so we will set that up. The mock drafts going forward, we'll set them up on Sleeper. We'll get you in there. We'll have it on the screen kind of behind me like you see here. And I will make snotty comments about your picks. It'll be great. Just like I want you to make snotty comments about mine, please. you maybe get. As you can see, and we'll get into this draft now. You can see we all draft. There's 4 of us, so we each draft 3 teams. I try to take different approaches. This is kind of, you're kind of experimenting at this point in the year more so than trying to build great teams, but see how things play out. And I've talked a lot about in the previous, live streams and just on the radio and just in general. I think I want to start reflecting a little more what the NFL is doing, which is investing more heavily in the passing attack and maybe going lighter on the running backs. I think I did that with Team 12 to a pretty good degree. And, there's some of it I like, some of it I don't like. I like my Team 8, by the way. I thought it was a pretty good team. There's some, it was interesting to watch this one play out because I think there was some flag planting here. Let's, go through the first round and kind of make the cases for or against all these guys. I said when I put out that way too early top 12, that any of my top 6, and I do believe this, whether it's Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Cooper Kupp, Travis Kelce, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, all could make an argument for them being the first pick overall. And probably at various points, all of them will be. And here's lesson number 1. If you do what I do or what a lot of us do, and you're in a lot of best ball drafts and you draft a lot, diversifying makes sense, right? Ask anyone who put all their first round tickets into the Jonathan Taylor box, right? I mean, it didn't work out great, and it often doesn't work out great. And here's why: because we are drafting in the first round players at their ceiling. We need them to deliver at the highest end for them to make good on their value. Well, you ask, well, why don't I draft other guys that I think have a better chance? Well, because you don't have to. Right? You may think that, I don't know, let's say, like I got Breece Hall in round 2. I thought I was a little aggressive on that. In hindsight, I probably wouldn't have done that. Let's say you think Breece Hall is going to be the best draft and best running back in football, right? Or let's say you think Amon-Ra St. Brown is worthy of the number 1 pick overall. Well, he may be. You may not be wrong. But you don't have to pay that price, and I think that's the key here to these drafts. And I'm not saying it to be dismissive of the first pick overall, but you need to, everything needs to work out right for that first pick overall. And some of them have a better history of that than others, and I think that explains why Mike Dempsey went with Travis Kelce at the 101. I know he won't do it every draft, but I think I will do it some drafts. I think the interesting thing here was to see how that team built out and what the other pieces were. When you invest that first pick, you've got the long wait and then the turnaround. Who's going to be there at that round 2-3 turnaround is interesting to me. And I think he went out a little bit on a limb with Bijan Robinson, drafting a rookie that early. But you guys could chime in on this as well. I've been a person who's shied away from drafting rookie wide receivers. Not shied away, but didn't want to overpay. I might be a little more willing to overpay, right? We've just seen the rookies are coming in a little more pro ready. The wide receivers are definitely coming in more pro ready. Talked to Marcus Grant from NFL Network about this last night, and he kind of totally endorsed this approach. I think he will be doing it as well, where we pay a little more attention. And he meant it across the board, Marcus. And I don't disagree with him. I don't know if Bijan Robinson needed to go that early, but I think Mike was just kind of making a case for it and taking a shot, right? And I think some of the players that went after Bijan Robinson, I don't know, Javonte Williams, a little bit risky, I would say. Dalvin Cook, I mean, we talked about him. Maybe if you don't feel real comfortable with him. Ramondre Stevenson, do you trust that what he was? I thought that was actually a pretty good value on Ramondre Stevenson in round 3. Or how about DeAndre Swift? There's a I don't want to say controversial, but there's a divisive pick, right? I mean, the talent is undeniable, right? His capability, his big play, breakaway threat, all those things are great. Doesn't seem like the Lions are as keen on him as we are, and they, doesn't quite get the workload that we need him to get to make good, on his ability. I mean, he's fine, but we were drafting him last year. You saw him go late in round 1. You saw him go early in round 2. I think those days are over. So, Bijan Robinson, risky ahead of him, yes, for sure. But defensible, also yes, for sure. Okay, so going back to Travis Kelce, I mean, if you're looking at number 1, I know it about Swift. You're not in on Swift, Andrea? I mean, that is totally understandable. I'm probably going to be dialed back. I think I probably will not be paying the price. And a lot of players, you end up, realizing you just got to acknowledge, okay, I mean, it's not like he's horrible. I'm just probably not going to get that player because I'm not paying that price, right? I'm not going to pay. I don't believe in him to the level other people believe in him. And I think there's ample reason for DeAndre Swift to be on that list for me. Not on the 10-foot pole list. I will touch him, but it's going to be the right price. James, last year, I took a lot of pundits' advice and waited on a quarterback. Ended up with Tom Brady. Didn't make the playoffs in my league. How long do you wait on a quarterback? I think this is this is something that we've been talking about as well. And by the way, if you go check out, Emil put a link in the chat there, and that's the who is on winning rosters, and you can see how high Kelsey is. Look how high Patrick Mahomes is as well, though. I think is also interesting. But this is the players who were on and the percentage of rosters they were on that were top finishes, right? Austin Eckler is way up there. Travis Kelce, though, 44%. Stephon Diggs way up there. Justin Jefferson way up there. Tony Pollard. Justin Fields won. There was a quarterback you could have drafted late that came through, but you need that quarterback that came through. So to put a finer point on it, James, and Marcus kind of said this as well. I think we've all evolved. We all like to wait until very late. And why do we wait till late? Because of positional scarcity. In a 12-team league, there are more than 12 quarterbacks you can play with. And there were quarterbacks that went well outside the top 12 that probably could have served you well, whether it was Jared Goff, Geno Smith. I mean, hell, you probably picked him up as a free agent if you had him. But others as well, maybe Trevor Lawrence, But and so I've kind of evolved over time I come to a point where the first place that I don't feel like I love a position player, a running back, a wide receiver, a tight end, there's a quarterback there for me. I don't think too early for a quarterback. I think round 3 is where you're going to start seeing quarterbacks go in almost every draft I've been in. In this mock draft, you'll see, I want to say Mike in the 9th pick overall in round 3 took Josh Allen. I think that's about right. Did Hurts go earlier in this draft? I have to look. So let me just. Yeah, Allen was the first quarterback. Followed shortly thereafter by Hurts, then Mahomes in round 4, Justin Fields in round 5. I mean, I think that's around Joe Burrow also in round 5. I think that's, James, where you're going to start seeing the quarterbacks come off. And in home leagues, maybe a little earlier. I don't know if Brian says maybe the 4th round is the earliest. I think the 3rd is the very earliest. I feel more comfortable with the 4th and would love it if they went farther, but it just kind of depends on who you're drafting with. I think in a lot of home leagues, you'll see quarterbacks go earlier. And, there's an argument to be made for it. When you look at the average scoring is kind of a good thing to look at. So let's go to the quarterback position. Last year, Patrick Mahomes. Let's sort by average here. This is a fairly generic league we use at SiriusXM. Josh Allen, 25.8 points. Jalen Hurts, 25.7. Patrick Mahomes, 25.3. Then you get a little bit of a drop-off to Joe Burrow at 22.9. Remember, he had a big chunk without Jamar Chase, so that may have been a factor. Justin Fields, 20.6. Lamar Jackson, when he was healthy, by the way, 20.3. Kyler Murray was up there at 19. Geno Smith, 18. Daniel Jones, 18. Tua, 18. Cousins, almost 18. Trevor Lawrence, 17.7. So you get the idea of the ranges, So I think when you get to that drop-off, that's where you start saying, okay, maybe I can shy off and take a chance if you want to take a chance. And so that's kind of the point for me is I want, if I can get one of those really super high-end guys, and for me, there's 3 of them that I feel like are super high-end. I mean, Hurts, Mahomes, Allen, I think are, guys that I'd be willing to commit to in 3 or 4. And after that, I'm probably gonna wait and see how it plays out. Yeah, Andrea says quarterbacks in home league goes first round, and I don't think that's unusual in a home league. I think when you get into more of the online leagues and playing with people who are more steeped in the internet and the Twitter world, you're going to see them want to wait a little bit. But nobody's waiting as long as we used to wait, right? Even J.J. Zacharyson, the late round quarterback guy, doesn't wait as long. And there was a time when I can remember drafting with him where you were waiting until the end of drafts, right? And times change, but also something I mentioned earlier in this stream. I want to be a little more reflective of what NFL is doing. I want to spend my resources in a way that's maybe more similar to what the NFL does. And what does the NFL pay for right now? Well, they certainly pay for quarterbacks. They pay for wide receivers, and they don't really pay for running backs. And so if you look at my team 12, let's look at that one real quick. Tyreek Hill at 12. I like this draft, by the way, for the most part. Wasn't happy with the where it went at running at quarterback. Just I was trying to make a hookup, right? And so it was like between Watson and Tua. But anyway, Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I thought I was aggressive on. That's well above what the experts' consensus ranking is on Fantasy Pros, I know. But I don't think it's out of line. Even expecting Jameson Williams to be a factor, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown has demonstrated a really solid role. And so what I did with those two, when you have Tyreek Hill, maybe a more volatile player, with some more highs and lows. I don't want to say boom bust because he's not, but maybe a little more up and down player. Get an leavening factor there. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's more consistently productive, right? Keenan Allen would be another player that fits that mold, right? So if you get a volatile kind of week-to-week volatility, you can kind of iron that out a little bit with a more consistent play, which is what I did. Mark Andrews, I took him ahead of T.J. Hawkinson, who I also got another a round later or a few picks later on Team 4. But Mark Andrews, to me, I can't get past when I watch him. When I watch the Baltimore Ravens play, Mark Andrews looks like the best player on the field, no matter what. Right? So I'm hoping Lamar Jackson gets things ironed out. I'm hoping a new offensive coordinator gets things done. But I'll acknowledge Andrews, I want to say his last year numbers at 17 points per game. That was unusually high. He had not been that high, but expecting 15 points a game, that doesn't seem unreasonable. But that's the thing about Travis Kelce, by the way, going first overall. If you look at the average scoring, this is not an unusual thing. Travis Kelce was 15.6 points a game, almost 16 points a game. T.J. Hawkinson was next at 10. So Travis Kelce, literally a player at half at his position. So, winning that weekly battle at that position, you pretty much ensure that with Travis Kelce at least most weeks. And there's something to be said for that. But so I got Amari Cooper then, who I thought ended up looking pretty strong. And I thought Deshaun Watson came on a little bit down the stretch. And then I waited, though, until the 5th and 6th rounds to get my running backs. And I got David Montgomery and Miles Sanders. David Montgomery, I hope he stays in Chicago. Miles Sanders, I hope he goes somewhere where they like him more than the Eagles do. Very talented, both very good runners. Not in love with the situation, but I think I could have done a lot worse. Alvin Kamara, went right before there. Would I have taken him? Tyler Algier right after those two? I think, those guys are probably in the conversation. Would have loved for Cam Akers to fall that far. He did not. Player that I think is going to be a good value this year. It went around, round 5. So, but I thought the Montgomery and Sanders were fine. Rashad White, I'm not happy with that pick. Deshaun Watson, I'm not especially happy with that pick. And I think almost, not to make excuses, but to make an excuse. You're only going 8 rounds. We know we're only going 8 rounds. It's a 2-hour show. We get in all we can. But I kind of wanted to, show that I wanted to add a quarterback, with a little bit of a stack there at a reasonable price. And the point in that being that, I'm not like out there looking to stack quarterback wide receiver combos early on. I'm not going to alter my draft. But if it comes to me later, yeah, I'm okay doing that, right? If it comes a little more organically, or I'm not overpaying for the quarterback, which I may have here. Watson was great down the stretch, or not great, but serviceable, showed promise down the stretch. Would love to see him regain his form, but I don't know that that's going to happen for sure. So not really happy with those last 2 picks, but I did like the way the build played out. And I like the first 2 running backs I got after I went running back heavy, 3 wide receivers and a tight end. So that was one of the things I was trying to do. So let's take a look at Mike Dempsey's team, number 1, what happened when he went Travis Kelce first. DK Metcalf and Bijan Robinson. He could have had a lot of really good running backs there, whether it was, Travis Etienne, Najee Harris, who maybe is a great value in round 3, right? Cook, Stevenson, I think there was a lot of guys. Andrew's not drafting Kamara. Look, I I understand that. I mean, at some point, the hammer's going to fall on him. There's going to be discipline, and it seems like it's going to be coming this offseason. Asked Drew for an update on that, Drew Davenport, on Thursday night, and he said there was a hearing on the 23rd. The process is moving forward. As soon as there's some finality, and if you didn't know, he got, he's charged with assault and from an incident at last year's Pro Bowl in Vegas where a guy was beaten up pretty badly. So there's apparently video. So doesn't seem to be heading in a good direction. The league is waiting until it's, the final adjudication to make their determination. My guess is there will be a suspension. So I'm avoiding him as well. But, that's why his price is so low. And, maybe Tony Pollard would have gone higher than round 4 if his injury hadn't played out. I'm still surprised that Akers went as late as he went. Isaiah Pacheco went in round 6. Tyler Algier. I want to say Brian Robinson was another one that I thought was, not a sexy pick, I don't think, but maybe a solid play. Oh, and something with Washington, with the Commanders. I mean, they let go of Scott Turner, who is now the passing game coordinator for the Raiders, which doesn't really surprise me because Ron Rivera, when he let Scott Turner go, everyone who's been, a regular here remembers last offseason, I was really complimentary of Scott Turner. Not, in terms of the offense in general, but the way he schemed up the wide receivers. I thought he was a big part of the success for Curtis Samuel. That was by design. Jahan Dotson, some of the early touchdowns especially, and some even later in the season seemed to really be, the touchdowns seemed to be products of scheming him into position to score. And I thought it was great for Turner. Unfortunately for Scott Turner, Ron Rivera would like to run the ball more, right? And I think he mentioned that, and that's one of the things why they parted ways with Scott Turner. I think they wanted a stronger rushing attack to complement a strong defense and maybe take the onus off their quarterback position because they're going to probably go in with Sam Howell as their starter, right? So it makes sense. But Brian Robinson, I mean, if that's the case, Antonio Gibson had surgery, I want to say last month. That is correct, in January. When you're just at the changeover of the month, you got to stop and think about it. But that makes sense. So I thought Robinson was a pretty good value in round 6, a guy that's going to get plenty of volume, and I think I'm chasing volume at that point or anticipated volume. But Dempsey gets Bijan Robinson in round 3. DeAndre Hopkins, who would probably go higher if we knew for sure where he was going to play. J.K. Dobbins, maybe really good value there. Maybe a year back, and I'm going to talk about this with Breece Hall. The full year removed from the ACL, we saw Dobbins come on down the stretch. Maybe he's ready to become a more of a frontline player, play a bigger role or a more consistent role. Deontay Johnson, who was serviceable. I mean, I think we all think, that Pickett is good. Pickett to Pickens, Kenny to George is going to be a thing going forward. And I'm pretty sure Pickett went a little earlier. Let me look here. I have to remember. Pickett went, where did I see Pickett go? Now I have to search. Pickens went in round, I want to say 8. So a little after that. So, we'll see how that plays out. But Deontay Johnson, plenty heavily targeted. So I think that's a fine pick. Jamal Williams, round 7, maybe a little earlier than I'd go, but, not based on what he produced as a touchdown guy the last 2 years. And then he went to Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back, just to be a little edgy there as well. Brian Larkin, the team that won in my league, had a quarterback, 2 wide receiver combo, Allen and Diggs and Davis. You're going to get me on the Gabe Davis bandwagon here. I think the Allen Diggs portion of that probably was the bigger portion. And if you go to those winning players, Stephon Diggs, if you hit that link, Stephon Diggs ranks 4th on there on 44% of the top 3. The top 3% owned in winning championship teams. So pretty damn good. Weekly average points, 19.8. So worth noting there. And, there is stacking. And I'm not against stacking. I just don't want to, I'm not forcing it. I don't want to overpay for it. So I'm wondering where, how late Allen's went versus Diggs. I think Diggs probably going in the top 2 rounds in most leagues as he went here. So sometimes that's the problem when you force those issues. I mean, look, got this guy to win. So even if you force the issue, he's not complaining. I thought Gabe Davis was not an easy play week to week last year. Way more way more single-digit scores than double-digit scores, right? I feel like he was overdrafted last year based on that huge game against Kansas City. And hell, if the Bills got knocked out of the playoffs a week earlier than they did, maybe we'd have the same belief because he had the huge game against Miami. So not so great against Cincinnati. Good morning, Mr. Scampers. Pleasure to see you, sir. Team 2, Christian McCaffrey, my number 1 overall, for right now. Again, I'm going to stress that I think any of the top 6 that I threw out there on Wednesday are, you can make a case for. McCaffrey is the one I can make a strongest case for. Eric got him number 2 overall. I think Dempsey will take him plenty. Justin Jefferson. What's my complaint about Justin Jefferson? If you didn't watch that last video, and if you didn't, you should go back and watch it. But I mean, there are weeks where teams figured him out, right? There are weeks he didn't show up. I don't think that's going to be the norm. I think there'll be way more weeks where he is there than he's not there. But the guy I picked after him, Cooper Kupp, pretty much every week has showed up except the week he got hurt. So I get it, he's older. I think Cooper Kupp probably fell out of the conversation, due to the injury. He was hurt in week 10. He still finished as the Rams leader in reception in every category. You have receptions, yards, touchdowns for a receiver except targets. I think he got surpassed by Tyler Higbee by the end of the season. But I mean, I didn't see Cooper Kupp slowing down. Sean McVay's return kind of sealed him in, kind of made this decision for me. We'll see what happens with Matthew Stafford. I think he'll be playing and he'll be fine. Austin Eckler, great value at 5, I think. I have him ranked at 2 overall right now. But again, if you're worried about touchdown regression, he's a prime candidate for that for a second straight year. It was having nothing to do with my regression nonsense last year. Told him to shove it in my can. Jamar Chase, again, I think Jamar Chase, to me, is an interesting piece here because you look at kind of a tale of 2 seasons for him. When he came back from the injury, opponents seemed to be determined to shut him down, to keep him from catching the long balls. And so Zach Taylor made a great adjustment and started using him over the middle and on shorter routes and with the hope that his athleticism would allow him to make some plays, which he did. But man, the target share went way up down the stretch after his return from the injury, and he far surpassed T. Higgins in terms of targets at that point. So interesting there. Jonathan Taylor, Jamie took with the 7th pick overall. I think that was high. Jamie thought that was high, but if you're chasing volume, talked to George Bremer from the Anderson Herald Bulletin last night. Covers this team on a daily basis, and we talked to him about Jonathan Taylor. He's all in on Jonathan Taylor too. He thinks that it's going to be a rebound year. It'll be something closer to 2021. Thinks the cleanup to the ankle is helpful. Thinks a better quarterback play, which could be worse. I guess that's the argument there. And hopefully the offensive line plays better. I mean, they lost a couple pieces. That offensive line way underperformed. So a lot of pieces, a lot of moving pieces still in Indy where they don't have a coach yet, just like Arizona. Talked to Tyler Drake, who covers the team, the Cardinals, and about some of the situations there. And it's hard for these beat writers to come on the radio program and fully discuss when all the pieces aren't in place. And primarily, I mean the head coach and the coordinators. So in the case of Jonathan Taylor, though, I think it's a pretty safe bet if they're going with one of the rookie quarterbacks, which seems very possible. That they're going to lean heavily on the running game. But that's a little rich for my blood. Saquon Barkley, it would be my preferred piece. Giants are in talks with him. I'm drafting him, assuming he's going to be still a New York Giant, right? And I'm like an unabashed Brian Daboll stan here. Just it's hard for me not to see what he did there, and I can remember myself talking about this last August. I think this offense is going to get better. But it's a low bar. They have a lot of room for growth. Well, they improved way more than I expected. And a big part of that improvement was Saquon Barkley, not just in terms of, staying on the field, which he mostly did. He got a little beat up there for a spell, had a neck issue, etc. But man, we saw a return of the earlier career Saquon Barkley with the explosive runs, the 10 plus yards, 20 plus yards that we didn't see all last year. So he's going to make himself some money. Hopefully he remains a New York Giant to make that money. Derrick Henry, I think to me, is a locked-in first-round pick until he falls off the cliff. I'll go ahead and take that chance. And there are going to be big changes there. He doesn't have a great offensive line. We're not sure what the quarterback situation is. Doesn't have a strong receiving core around him to make for a great passing attack. So he's older. He's like 29. I don't care. He's dealt with these issues before, right? This is not a new thing for Derrick Henry, who just keeps on Derrick Henrying, and I'm all about that. Eric Romoff took Devontae Adams ahead of the likes of Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown. I mean, CeeDee Lamb. I mean, I was a little aggressive on Amon-Ra St. Brown, so I'll leave him out of the mix. But you can make a lot of arguments for a lot of these players, but Devontae Adams does not have a quarterback right now. Maybe it ends up being Aaron Rodgers. I don't know, but I like Devontae Adams as well. I think at this point, if you're drafting, like if I was drafting one team, I might dial back. But knowing I'm going to diversify over the course of time, I think Devontae Adams. I thought he finished as wide receiver 2 last year. I mean, it's not like he's incapable of getting the job done, even with a limited wide receiver 3. I want to say last year, Tyreek Hill wide receiver 2, Justin Jefferson wide receiver 1. So, I mean, that makes perfect sense. I wanted you guys to throw in, Andrea likes Henry. Throw in, is there any team that really strikes you as standing out? Were there any teams you preferred? Any picks that you felt were like way out of line or that you totally agree with or you feel like were great values? I'd be interested in hearing where you're at. Some of the ones that stood out to me, I wanted to talk about my pick of Breece Hall in the second round. After I made that pick, I wanted to make that look. Breece Hall was fantastic. He was on Rookie of the Year pace, right? And I think it was a clean ACL tear, great. I think J.K. Dobbins' ACL tear 2 years ago was clean as well. His happened in August, and he never quite got back. Brandon Cooks was not taken the first 6 rounds. Mr. Scampers is pleased. Just to veer off that, Mr. Scampers, I did talk to Aaron Wilson last night. If you missed it, I think you weren't here at the top of the live stream. He doesn't. Brandon Cook's future is an open book, all right? Like it's going to be hard to move him given his contract. He would have to make some kind of concessions there or whatever. But he doesn't want to be there. Aaron Wilson has not talked to him recently, but talked to him at the end of the season, and he does not want anything to do with the rebuild. So we'll see where Brandon Cooks ends up. Maybe he changes his mind. DeMeco Ryans seems to be very popular. Aaron Wilson did not know that when we talked last night. Wasn't sure if that was the case or not, but did mention the last time he talked to him that Brandon Cooks he's had it. So we'll see if he can get out of there or not. But yeah, he's another guy that I think we're all, anyone who's been drafting for the last few years knows that Brandon Cooks has been going at a great value, and he's a value here as well. But the Breece Hall, week 7 was the injury. He'd kind of a narrow band of high end production because he didn't come out, as the initial primary back, but he certainly, established himself at that before he was hurt. But as soon as I made that pick, or maybe shortly after the draft, I'm thinking, man, what about J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, right? It took them, we're at the point where we kind of believe a torn ACL is you're back in 9 months and away you go. It is not necessarily how it goes. It's not necessarily how it goes, right? J.K. Dobbins will tell you that. He had to have the additional cleanup, had some scar tissue. Gus Edwards didn't really hit the field. His was a more complex tear. Everything wasn't just ACL. But there's no guarantee these players, and I would remind you that about Javonte Williams. We'll have to see. These are worth watching, right? The medical technology has improved greatly over the course of years. And players almost invariably come back from these things without issue, but it's how long it takes them. And I think we've kind of in our mind, I know in my mind, I've shortened that up maybe more than I should have. Said all my last year investment in J.K. Dobbins and probably this year's investment in Breece Hall. I'm still going to draft him some and hope that he comes on down the stretch. You need guys late in the season, right? But we'll have to see how that plays out. I thought that was a little bit of a reach. We'll see. Jamie took Kenneth Walker right in that same range. We'll see what's up with him as well. I remain a little skeptical. Thought it was great. Just would like to see more use as a receiver for him. Bijan Robinson, obviously a bit of a reach, but I think Dempsey acknowledged that. Some of the values I thought, Brian Larkin likes team 3, except for Prescott. This is winning team, so that's Jamie's team. Jefferson, Walker, ETN, Aaron Jones. Pretty good streak of running backs there, I would say, the whole body. Mike Evans in round 5, not knowing who his quarterback is. Do you think he's fallen off a cliff? I think last year was maybe more of an aberration than anything. A lot of the Buccaneers' woes clearly went back to the offensive line, right? That caused them some problems. And in particular, Mike Evans, who runs deeper routes that take longer to develop, I mean, you could make sense. Also, he dropped a lot of balls. I mean, we'll see. Brandon Ayuk on that team, Marquise Brown, Dak Prescott as well. Andrea likes team 4. I do too. Cooper Kupp, Breece Hall. We'll see if Breece Hall. Devontae Smith, who I think, surprised people. A.J. Brown, we all thought it was the A.J. Brown show, and it kind of was at times. Not all the time. Devontae Smith really came on strong. T.J. Hawkinson, the weeks 15, 16, 17. T.J. Hawkinson had 37 targets, tied for the most in the NFL with who? Justin Jefferson. So very busy was he. Michael Pittman, don't know who the quarterback's going to be, but think the role, 140 plus, 141 targets last year. I'll invest in that in round 5, I think, is a pretty reasonable investment. Brian Robinson Jr., Justin Herbert. I don't know why I picked Jerick McKinnon. He doesn't seem to be a factor. The Chiefs kind of put him in mothballs until late in the season. But, boy, if you have him, that's a great run. So I've kind of drafted a strong finish there more than anything else. Any of the teams that you guys thought were good or horrible, it's okay to miss stuff, Mr. Campers. You're out there looking at a lot of stuff, man. You catch the replay. Any teams that were disappointing? The team that I think I ended up feeling not the best about, I want to say, was my team. I like team 8. I guess team 12 I don't feel really comfortable with in general, mostly because I picked Deshaun Watson. I just feel like I was kind of reaching there and trying to make a point. Mr. Scampers likes the value once again of Monty at the end of the 5th for Team 12. Yeah, I agree with that. And that was so I think I loved the Team 12 draft. I would say the Team 12 draft was my favorite draft through round 6, right? Because I think Sanders is going to go somewhere where maybe they lean on him more heavily, than Philadelphia has. I mean, I've mentioned this before, but I always joke with all the beat writers. We talk about the Eagles. Why don't the Eagles love Miles Sanders as much as we do? Miles Sanders knows this. Remember going into the season, don't draft me. I want to take don't draft me. I'm not about your fantasy. And he's not, but he had a really successful season. So I thought through those picks was pretty good. And I thought Montgomery, we'll see, talk to Zach Pearson from Bear Report on Thursday. And, what are the chances Montgomery's back or not? And, Zach Pearson thinks he's not going to price himself out of the conversation, that maybe there'll be a little bit of a hometown discount. We'll see. I know Montgomery addressed that himself. There's been some rumors out there that he wants a ton of money. And he said, don't listen to that nonsense. But he didn't say nonsense. He said something else. Any other points anyone wants to make? Dameon Pierce in round 4, I thought was a pretty good value. Again, think the volume is going to be there. I don't see anyone else coming in. Green Screens Media, a.k.a. Eric Romoff, wondering where you've seen this draft for. He's seen it because he was in it. Hi, Eric. Dameon Pierce going ahead of guys like Aaron Jones, James Conner. Interesting. I do think the volume is there. And we'll see about White and Watson, right? I mean, I guess my point trying to do that, Scampers, was I wanted to be clever and say I had kind of a semi-organic stack there with Cooper. And look, I thought Cooper outperformed expectations. A lot of players last year that we thought didn't have good quarterbacks. And I'm looking at DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett as well. I mean, those guys went super late in drafts, and so did Amari Cooper. And I think it's just a good reminder. We shall, remember, just a bad quarterback situation does not mean that a team can't throw, right? Teams can throw even without great quarterbacks. It's just you don't want to have the not great quarterback. You can have the other pieces. Andrea likes Team 10 also. Eric's Team 10. What do you think of Team 10, Green Screens Media? Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, Ramondre Stevenson. That is a pretty good team. Tony Pollard, I like that range of backs, assuming Tony Pollard is back at full health, and I think he will be. I'm assuming he'll remain a Cowboy. Young receivers on the rise in Olave, London, and Pickens all in a row. Dalton Schultz are super solid tight ends. So that is a pretty solid team. And I talked a little earlier about, was that too early for Adams? I don't think it was too early. You could make an argument that I like Stephon Diggs more. I like Tyreek Hill more. Good morning, Timothy King. I talked about this early in the stream, by the way, the Purdy versus Lance. And I think my default position is this is Brock Purdy's job until it's not. We'll see how the recovery goes. Either way, the 49ers are set at quarterback. They have 2 quarterbacks under contract for less than $10 million. Not a lot of teams in that position. They can invest in pieces around them, so I think they're fine going forward. And Trey Lance's future will depend on Brock Purdy's recovery. But talking to people in San Francisco who talk to people who make these decisions will tell you that it's Brock Purdy until they can't make a Brock Purdy. Just a simple reason, right? And it sometimes it can be really simple. Is Brock Purdy is the closest thing the 49ers can have to execute. Is the guy that has done the best job of executing the vision of Kyle Shanahan. He did the things Kyle Shanahan wanted. Spread the ball around to the pieces that he wanted to get it to. Went through the reads, as he wanted. Made great reads. The George Kittle play, with the big, kind of acrobatic cat or the catch that we saw against Dallas. That kind of, was essentially a game winner. That was like his, he was not a read. There was three targets ahead of him on the list, and Purdy went through that whole progression and then found the open guy who was Kittle as his 4th read. So Cooper is great until Watson came back. I expect the same, Scampers. That's my hope. I just feel like I may be overpaid for Watson. I hate to overpay. I'm such a cheapskate. And by the way, Eric liked that Team 10 as well with those young wide receivers. That's a really good run, and I think I did not pay that much attention to it until just now. And I went, wow, that's really good. I like that. All right, everybody. If you have a few final questions here, get them in right now. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. I'll be back Wednesday, and we'll figure something else out exciting, maybe a little more Super Bowl talk and get you ready. We'll do some of that Saturday as well. And I know we'll start doing some mocks with you guys participating after the Super Bowl. Maybe set one up before the end of the month, and we'll do these on Sleeper. So if you're interested in doing this and you don't have a Sleeper account, go get one. It doesn't cost you anything to have a Sleeper account, and get ready. And we'll set up some drafts, and I will mock your mocks or compliment them, as the case might be. It's a really good time. We can get these drafts in usually in less than an hour, and gives plenty of time for commentary. And if it works out well, we'll get all your comments on the drafts, etc. So appreciate you all coming. This is the first mock draft Monday. Thank you, Eric, for taking part and being a regular on Mock Draft Monday is very helpful. And so follow him at Fantasy Nav and Green Screens Media. He's both those places. CJ Stroud or Young? Probably Stroud for me. I mean, I know I don't want to overplay the size issue, but I think the size issue is something that teams are going to look at. I don't know if I don't want to compare him to Baker Mayfield, but just that size issue for Young seems to be the thing that concerns me. And Stroud, more of a prototypical, more of the prototypical kind of build for a quarterback, and Levis the same for him, Will Levis. So we'll see. I'll have Laub on here soon. John Laub on the radio program today. SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio will be on from 3 to 5. We'll have beat writers from Seattle and Detroit looking at those teams, what they might do in the draft, kind of set the table with those. We've done 4 teams so far, and it's been great fun to get started. We did Chicago and Houston on Thursday night, did Arizona and Indy last night. So if you have the SiriusXM subscription, use the app, listen to the replays of those. Had great guests the last 2 nights as well. Drew Davenport on Thursday, Marcus Grant last night, Johnny Lobb, the Gridiron Scholar today. I'll have John back here on the live stream as well to start talking more about the rookies. We'll get Matt Waldman in here too from the rookie scouting portfolio and start getting a really good assessment of the rookies. I know we had questions about that early on that I think, this is part of my process. I'm watching the NFL in the season, so I dive into the rookies after the season, and these guys have been following them all along. Laub, Waldman, it's like a entire industry unto itself. So we'll bring in some of the top names of that to get us up to speed on all the rookies. So again, thanks everyone for coming. Catch me on the Sirius 3 p.m. today. We'll be on again Monday night at 10, Thursday night at 10, Friday night at 10. I'll be back here next Wednesday at 7. Be back here again Saturday. You'll be sick of me in no time at all. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for coming. Again, hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed. Hit the like button if you didn't hit it. And we'll see you next week.